Hello, all you wonderful readers. Welcome to ShelfCheck, brought to you by the Carolina Manga Library. Today, we're going to take a walk through the library shelves to talk about our very first episode, the prologue. We're going to be recommending several graphic novels from different genres and tell you why they are amazing. Quickly, we are only going to be recommending series that are officially available in the US, either digitally or physically. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started. So, who am I, and why on earth should you even care what I have to say? Well, my name is Laura, and I'm the head librarian and founder of the Carolina Manga Library. The Carolina Manga Library is a nonprofit organization that operates a traveling graphic novel library, and we set up at schools, conventions, hospitals, children's shelters, anywhere that really wants to give kids free access to books. Our library has over 5,000 titles in it. It's got manga, it's got light novels, it's got graphic novels, it's got printed versions of webcomics, it's got some of the old newspaper comic strips like Calvin and Hobbes, and we've been collecting and traveling for 10 years this year in 2023. We're so happy to continue to do what we do, and I love what we do. It's so much fun to set up the library and watch somebody's eyes just widen when they walk in. Or my favorite thing is when somebody will walk along the shelves and they'll point out an old favorite from like the 1980s and the 1990s, and they're like, oh my god, I thought I dreamed that series. It happens way more often than you would think. As a librarian, I'm actually a certified librarian. Most of my staff is certified librarians. We specialize in reader's advisory, which is when we can go up to somebody, ask them a couple basic questions about what they like or what they're looking for, and we can recommend them somewhere between 8 and 10 titles that we think that they would enjoy. And not to brag, but I've never failed. In 10 years, I've developed the ability to figure out what a person is looking for. I can shove a book in their hands, and they'll sit there and read it for 20 minutes, and then they'll want the rest of it, which is why I wanted to start doing this podcast. This podcast actually started as a set of panels that I do at the conventions that we attend. I currently run 5 different panels, but my 2 most popular are Great Graphic Novels You Should Be Reading and What the F Did I Just Read? They're both basic recommendation panels where I take 45 minutes and I break down by genre a couple of suggestions from each different genre, and I give a little summary about the series, and I tell people why it's so good and where they can read it. So I had so many people ask me at the end of that panel, hey, do you do a podcast? Do you do a YouTube channel? Where can we find more recommendations? Well, I figure for our 10th anniversary of the Manga Library, it's about time that I started up the podcast. So what are we doing here? So each month, the podcast is going to have a different theme, and those themes will be announced at the end of the previous month's podcast. So you'll be able to think about it for a couple of weeks while I figure out what I'm going to be talking about. So the general breakdown of how each episode is going to go, we're going to have our introduction, where we're going to talk about what theme we're going to be talking about that particular month. Then we're going to dive straight into the recommendations, and there'll be between 5 and 10 recommendations of titles per month, depending on how many I can fit into a certain theme. Then there's going to be a Q&A portion where it's basically an Ask Me Anything, that we're going to be pulling questions from our Discord server. And hey, did you know that we had a Discord? A lot of people don't know that we're on Discord. You can join it for free. The links are in the description below. We also have some Patreon-only parts of the Discord, and we will be pulling questions from there. So we're always going to start off with a patron asked question first, as long as we have one. Hey, guess what? We have a Patreon. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, our patrons are the only reason that we are able to do a podcast. They've been incredibly generous since we first started. They're small but plucky, and I love all of them. So the links to the Patreon are also in the description below. So intro, recommendations, QA portion, announcements about the Manga Library, and then our outros and thank yous. So the upload schedule right now is going to be once a month. We're probably going to aim for towards the end of the month. I'm going to try to get it out the 3rd or 4th Wednesday. Obviously, this first month is our testing, so we've got our editor working on this, recording for the first time, me working out all the kinks. I've recorded this section at least 6 times so far, so it's got some hiccups that we're working through. But we're going to do it once a month. We're going to aim for the 3rd Wednesday every month. I wish it could be more often, but me and all of my volunteer staff, we are all volunteers, which means that on top of all the traveling and all the extra work that we do behind the scenes, we all also have daily muggle jobs that we have to go to earn money so we can feed all the library cats. So hopefully if this gets really popular, I can expand it, and I will happily sacrifice my personal time to record more of these, and our editor can do some more editing. We also may do some special additional episodes that may not be announced as early as I would want to, but like if we're at a convention and somebody comes in and they're, a special voice actor or something, maybe we can sit down and do a little recording session with them, do some Q&A with them. I'm hoping that this expands to more than just once a month, really, but for now, once a month, third Wednesday of the month, starting in September. So like I said, this very first episode is just called The Prologue. It's just a short little explanation of why we're going to be doing this, what we're going to be doing, and I'm doing this so that we don't have to explain it every single time. This will answer a lot of people's questions about what we're going to be doing. It'll answer a lot of people's questions about what to expect, and that way we can leave all of this here in this first episode for everyone to go back and watch later if they want to. So I don't have to explain it over and over and over again for every single episode. I can just do a one-sentence summary of what we're going to be doing, and then hopefully everyone will have all their questions answered here. So thank you so much for joining us on this month's episode of Shelf Check, which again is brought to you by the Carolina Manga Library. We will be back immediately with episode 2, which we're going to call Head Librarian Favorites. Remember, if you're interested in supporting the library, consider becoming a patron. Our patrons get access to the podcast a day early, as well as behind-the-scenes fun like bloopers and transcripts. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find links to all of this on our website, www.carolinamangalibrary.com. Until next month, see you in the stacks. Hello, all you wonderful readers. Welcome back to Shelf Check, brought to you by the Carolina Manga Library. Today, we're going to be taking a walk through the shelves to talk about Head Librarian's favorites. These are going to be some titles that our Head Librarian has simply loved and cannot wait to tell you about why you should read them. As usual, we're going to recommend several graphic novels from different genres and tell you why they are amazing. As a reminder, we're only recommending series that are officially available in the US, either digitally or physically. So with all that out of the way, let's get reading. Special thanks goes out to our patrons. 3 of our patrons, if you join at one of our highest tiers, always get a thank you. So special thank you goes out to DB Explorer, Sean Vahek, and Chaos Chan. Thank you so much for being patrons, and we hope that you enjoy today's episode. So with our very first episode, what I wanted to do was talk about some of my favorite series of all times and why I think you should read them. We're going to go down and we're going to do a couple of different genres. I'm going to break it down for you by genre and give you an example from each genre that has to do with the topic of that week. So my topic this week is going to be Head Librarian Favorites. My name is Laura. I'm the Head Librarian and founder of the Carolina Manga Library, and I cannot wait to tell you about some of these books. So we're going to start off with fantasy, and the number one fantasy series for me of all time is definitely Elfquest by Wendy and Richard Pini. It's put out by their publisher, Warp Graphics, and actually Dark Horse. They just partnered up with Dark Horse to publish the entire series in these gigantic, beautiful omnibus editions. So this series is super high fantasy. The authors actually say it's called Fantasy with Teeth. So it's about a group of elves living on another planet. This is not our world. This is the world that has 2 moons. There's humans here, and there's elves, and there's trolls, and there's little winged things. There's all kinds of creatures here, and it's great. So we follow a group of elves that ride on wolves, and they live in the forest, and they are known collectively as the Wolf Riders. And they are constantly at war with these primitive humans who want to kill them because they're demons, and the elves just want to live in the forest with nature and be happy. So one day, the conflict escalates to the point where the humans burn down the entire forest, and the elves have to go on the run. And they end up in this huge desert, and they're crossing this desert, and everybody's dying of thirst, and all of a sudden they find a village of other elves. And they didn't know that there were other elves in this world. They thought they were all alone. And their chief manages to fall in love with one of the new elves, and they assimilate into their culture, and he decides a little bit down the way that he is going to make it his life's mission to go and find all the scattered children of the elves and bring them all together, because they're all family. They're all brothers and sisters, and they should all know each other. So the entire series is about him traveling the world and meeting other groups of elves, not all of them good either, and how his family is at the center of this whole entire storyline. He and his mate and his children, and there's secrets about him that you will not learn until the very end of the series. There's a lot of really great drama. There's war between elven tribes over ancient artifacts. There's a couple of great orgies. There's a lot of free love in this. There's a lot of good battle scenes. It's got everything that you want. It's got everything that anybody who is a fan of fantasy will want. It's got fantastic characters. It's got art that will knock your socks off. Elfquest is actually I think it's the longest running independently published comic in US history. It's been running for more than 45 years now. It's still in publication. It's still got new stories coming out. And it's been consistently drawn by Wendy Pini and written by Richard Pini. Also, Sonny Strait, the voice actor, he's also working on this. He's been working on it for years. He's one of their colorists. So it's really fun to see Sonny kind of pop in every once in a while in some of the online discourse about this series. This series is a hugely, wonderfully influential series. A lot of folks that are into comics read Elfquest when they were younger. You even see pieces of it in like Big Bang Theory. They don't ever really talk about Elfquest, but it's there. You can see they're picking up copies of the comics in the comic book shop. I think one of the people that actually wears an Elfquest shirt at one point. It's a series that is very deep. This is not a quick read. This is very much a read once to get the story, read it again to get the art, and then you read it again to get all the nuance and all of the foreshadowing. There's stuff that happens in chapter 1 that comes back in chapter 147 that makes you go back and like, wait, when did they talk about that? Oh my God, it was all the way back here on page 2 of chapter 1. The world building is just top notch. It's so good. It's so deep. And you're going to hate everyone you're supposed to hate. You're going to love everyone you're supposed to love. The entire concept of love is very well explored in this series. There's twosomes, there's threesomes, there's same sex, there's it doesn't matter. You love who you love, and I just adore that. It was really ahead of its time, and of course it's perfect for now. But even back when it was first being published in the 70s, it was, ahead of its time. So yeah, if you really like fantasy and you like your fantasy with teeth, you definitely need to go read Elfquest. You can get the physical copies by Warp Graphics and Dark Horse. And the authors did something really smart. They took the original story, so the original 8 books, you can read for free on their website, just elfquest.com. There's an amazing, what they call an audio movie that they just did a big fundraiser for and just came out earlier last year, where they take the first book and they literally did a live, it's called an audio movie. So it's an audio book version, but it's got a full soundtrack with sound effects and music and Foley's and everything like that. It's just like you're listening to a movie. That's how wonderful it is. And Cree Summer's in it. Who doesn't love Cree Summer? So yes, definitely go check out Elfquest. If you don't know where to start, email me. I'll happily I'll happily aid you in your addiction to this. Okay, so our next recommendation is going to be from Action and Adventure, and I would love to tell you about Crazy Food Truck. It's by the really good artist Ogaki Rukuru, and it's published by Viz Media here in the United States. This is a post-apocalyptic series, completely silly. This series should not exist. It's only 3 books long. It's super simple, but the characters and the plot line are so engaging that you're just gonna barrel through all 3 books, I promise. So, very basically, to sum it up, the series is about a post-apocalyptic world where fresh food is not existent really anymore. And this one middle-aged dude decides that he is going to make a food truck. And he makes he's an amazing chef, and he makes all this food, and he goes to the different pockets of civilization, and he sells his food out of his food truck. And he's very happy to do this. He's this huge, like, old grizzled dude, and he just loves to cook. And one day he's driving along, and he sees this duffel bag in the middle of the road, and he's like, all right, it's either a bomb, it's a body, or it's food. So he's got to go open it. And he opens it up, and it turns out it's a naked chick. And he's like, all right, fine. I'll put the chick in the back of the truck, put the body in the back of the truck, and then I will bury it somewhere along the road because I have to go hunting right now. So he's driving along, and all of a sudden his food truck gets attacked by a bunch of army guys, and as he's driving along and trying to get rid of them, the dead body in the back wakes up. Hot chick stands up completely naked, eats all the food in the back of his truck, and then proceeds to beat the crap out of all of the army dudes. She's like a deadly weapon, like a created weapon, and he's a retired military general. And they're on the run now from the military in this post-apocalyptic world. All she wants to do is eat his food, and all he wants to do is cook for her. It's so stupid, y'all. It's the dumbest series I think I've ever read, but I have never read a series faster than I read Crazy Food Truck. The plot line, you have no idea where it's going. I had no clue. Every single curveball they threw at me hit me in the face. It was great. I wasn't able to predict anything. I wasn't able to see where any plot line was going. I was so happy the way this series turned out. It's a quick read. You can read it, of course, the physical copy. It's only 3 books. You can get it on Kindle. You can also get it on the Viz app. So our next title is going to be a romance suggestion, and this one is one of my new favorites, and it's not a manga. Look at that. So I'm going to tell you about the Remarried Empress. This is a webtoon by an artist called Alpha Tart, which is a silly name, but screen names are interesting, especially when this is a Korean manhwa. So this is published through the Webtoon app. If you do not have Webtoon on your phone yet, put me on pause for a few seconds. Go get your phone and download Webtoon, because it's just a repository of independently published comics. They're every genre you can think of, and a few that you couldn't. And this one is one that I am currently obsessed with. This is the romance, again, Remarried Empress. So this is a fantasy-esque series. It has very tiny bits of magic in it. It's not high fantasy by any means. It's much more romantic drama. And it's about a woman who has been married to the current emperor of this huge kingdom she's been engaged to him since they were children. They got married. They've been married for like 10 years. And the honeymoon is definitely over, okay? They respect each other. She's an amazing empress. He's an okay emperor. But there's no love here anymore. And they have no children. So, of course, the emperor picks up a side chick. And he decides that he is going to divorce his wife and marry his side chick so that his child can be born legitimate and they have an heir to the throne. And then he's going to divorce his side chick and remarry his empress because she's such a good empress. So our empress finds out about this, and the day of the big court case comes, and they're in front of the bishop of the church that they have, and the bishop asks her, do you accept this divorce without contest? And she says, yes, I accept this divorce. I am officially divorced. I am no longer your empress. And everyone's like, oh, no, the empress, no. And the emperor is being all smug and everything. And then she says, wait a minute, I have a request. I request the ability to remarry. And the bishop is like thrown for a loop. The emperor is completely stunned. And this completely awesome blonde dude walks out of the shadows. And he says, I guess that's my cue. And she says, I wish to remarry this guy, the king of a neighboring country. That's chapter 1 of this series. It's been going on for several years now. It is so good. It's got tons of great drama. You're going to hate everyone you're supposed to hate. You're going to love the Empress. She's super repressed, but she's super smart and super nice. The guy that she gets engaged to, the neighboring king, is the fluffiest little cinnamon roll ever. And he's so cute. And you're going to hate the stupid emperor that she divorces. You're going to love watching these idiots run around each other. This is such a fun series. I love it. It's so good that I have an alarm set on my phone so that I can make sure I read it the minute it comes out. So again, The Remarried Empress on Webtoon. If you like your drama with a whole bunch of spice to it, you will love The Remarried Empress. So the next title I'd like to recommend to you is a little bit of an older series. It's still being published, but it's been in publication for quite a while. It's kind of slow to come out. I believe it's up to 19 books now. And I'd like to tell you about Arpeggio of Blue Steel, which is written by a group called Arc Performance, and it's put out by Seven Seas Entertainment. And this is a fantastic sci-fi series. This series has some of the best sci-fi fights I have seen outside of Tezuka. The action is extremely well drawn, it's very fluid. It's got some really cool guns, y'all. Seriously, some really cool weapons. All right, so basically, Arpeggio of Blue Steel, and by the way, if you're looking it up on Google, it's Arpeggio. Yes, the musical term. Arpeggio of Blue Steel. All right, so aliens invade Earth, and they are battleships, like on the ocean type battleships and submarines, and they now rule our oceans. We can't ship anything across the seas. We can't fly over the oceans. We can't sail through the oceans. We cannot communicate basically over the oceans. So we're basically subjugated, okay, by these aliens. Our story follows one of the aliens who is a little submarine, and she defects from her sisters. Of course, all the ships are female because that's the joke. All ships are female. So she gets impressed by the fact that humans are tricksy little devils. Okay, we can plot, we can scheme, we can change on a dime, we can do all these sneaky things that she can't do because she's basically a computer. And she gets so impressed by this one guy named Gunzo that she's like, all right, that's it. I want to be more like the humans. The humans are worth saving. I'm going to defect from my army. I'm going to team up with this guy and his ragtag group of pirates, and we are going to take down my sisters. If that wasn't cool enough, this little submarine decides that she wants to be more like the humans. So she has to look like a human. So she actually creates a hard light construct of herself as a cute little, like, chibi girl. And she controls the submarine, and the humans kind of control what she can do, but she only listens to the captain, and the captain doesn't listen to anybody except himself. So they're fighting for humanity, but on their own. So her sisters get wind of this, and they all decide that they want to be more like humans. So they all create hard-like constructs of themselves, and they start up a counterattack against the little submarine, and a couple of her sisters defect, and it's a sister-on-sister war. All the character designs of the hard-like constructs are lolly junk. They're amazing. There's one girl that only dresses in lingerie. There's one girl that only dresses in this long coat. There's one that's just like complete goth lolly, and it's just wonderful. And all of them have different personalities, and it's all funny. And again, some of the sci-fi fights, these are amazing, amazing fights. The drawing, the fluidity of the fight, the creativity of the weapons that they use. Oh, this series is so good. It's so good. There is an anime of it, of course, but it only covers like the first 3 books. So you don't get into the meat of the story with the anime. You really need to go read the manga. You can read this, of course, in the physical copies, which are the early series. The early volumes are getting kind of hard to find now, but you can read it all on Crunchyroll's manga website. So definitely try out Arpeggio of Blue Steel by Arc Performance. So my next recommendation for you is going to be in the horror genre, and I would like to tell you about an older series called Mermaid Saga by Rumiko Takahashi. If you don't know her name, I promise you have either read or seen something that she's written. She wrote Ranma 1/2, Lam Urusei Yatsura, Inuyasha, and of course the new series, Yasahime. She's not writing it, she's like consulting on it, but it's still got all of her touches to it. Thankfully, Mermaid Saga was actually one of her earlier series. It came out in the mid to late 90s, and thankfully it was rescued from publication hell by Viz Media, and they put out the entire story in a couple of big omnibus copies. Mermaid Saga is a bunch of short stories about the idea that from Japanese folklore, where if you eat the flesh of a mermaid, you can become immortal. So back in the olden times, back in the feudal era, I guess you can call it, there's never really specified of when this takes place. A young man is living in a fishing village, and one of the fishermen finds a dead mermaid. And like, oh, okay, cool. So everyone in the village eats a piece of the mermaid flesh. So they can all become immortal. And a couple people, as soon as they eat the flesh, they just start spitting up blood and they die horribly. So everyone's scared, like, oh my god, we're all gonna die. So about about a quarter of the village dies quickly as soon as they eat the flesh of the mermaid. So they all go to bed that night, and our main character wakes up to hear a bunch of screaming. And he runs outside, and there's all these giant bug-eyed monsters, like straight out of out of the Mountains of Madness, okay? Straight out of the Cthulhu place. Big, bulgy eyes, fish faces, long claws, really creepy. They're wonderfully creepy. And he, he's defending everybody, and he kills one of them with a spear, and he sees that it's wearing a necklace from a girl that he liked, and he's like, oh my god, everyone that ate the flesh of a mermaid either died or turned into one of these monsters. Everybody except for him. He does, in fact, become immortal. He doesn't want to be immortal. It's great for the first, 20 years or so, but his entire village is dead. His entire family is gone, and he has no one to live for. So he spends the next century wandering around trying to find a mermaid to tell him how to break this immortality curse. He wants to die. So it's all a bunch of short stories about the people that he meets whose lives have also been affected by the mermaid's flesh. They've been cursed, they've been turned into monsters, their families been keeping them in a basement. It's just a whole bunch of really great dark stories about the dark side of immortality. In the whole 100 years, he's only met 3 other people that have ever become immortal. Everybody else has either died or turned into a monster or had something else terrible happen to them. So yeah, Mermaid Saga, short stories, which is one of Rumiko Takahashi's best things. Her short stories are amazing. If you have a chance to go pick up any of her compilations of short stories, she's one of those authors where if she's not drawing, she's not happy. I read an article once where she had explained that she had 10 filing cabinets of just sketches of short stories. She'll wake up from a dream and she'll dream something cool, and she just writes it down as soon as she wakes up. And she puts it in the filing cabinet for one day, maybe she'll turn it into a story. And I just love that concept. So yeah, dark, dark stories from one of the greatest manga authors of all time, Mermaid Saga. It's being put out by Viz Media. You can read it in the physical omnibus copies. It's available on Kindle, and you can read it through the Viz app. So my next recommendation for you is a comedy series, and it's called Monthly Girls Nozaki-Kun. And it's by an artist called Izumi Tsubaki, and it's being put out in the US by Yen Press. This series is so stupid. It's so stupid. The premise is stupid, the characters are all stupid, and the entire series' comedy hinges on the fact that everybody is stupid. But they're not stupid in the stupid way. They're stupid in an endearing, adorable, oh, you poor little thing kind of way. I like to use the phrase from the Disney movie Brave. Whenever the main character does something stupid or the love interest does something stupid, immediately I'm just like, oh, wee lamb. It's that kind of stupid. It's the adorable little, you just want to pick it up and hug it when it falls down kind of stupid. Our story follows a vivacious little fluffy-haired idiot in high school, and she is head over heels in love with this dude named Nozaki-Kun. And she really wants to confess to him, and she wants to live happily ever after with him, and it's great. And so she confesses, finally, one day. And he's this big stoic guy. Think Mori-senpai from Ouran High School Host Club. Big, tall, doesn't say a lot, but is very handsome. So she confesses, and he's staring at her for a few minutes, and all of a sudden he whips out a pen and he starts sketching. And he's drawing out this shoujo protagonist, trying to capture he's trying to capture the face of this girl confessing to him. And our main character's like, what are you doing? And he confesses that he is, in fact, a shoujo manga artist publishing under a female pen name. And he's like the most popular he's like the most popular shoujo manga artist currently. He's like the hot stuff. And he's this big, tall high school guy writing just, shoujo tripe. So our main character decides, okay, I'm going to help him publish his manga, and I'm going to be his assistant, and then he'll fall in love with me. And it's so stupid because he is completely oblivious to anything having to do with love. Everything he does is focused on his manga. Every time something romantic happens, he makes into a chapter in his manga. Every time the main character does something cute, he makes it a story in his manga. He is so oblivious that it hurts. To the point where I think at about book 5, I finally started yelling at the cover. I finally started yelling at the character as I was reading. I was like, what are you doing? Just hug her, or just give her your umbrella, or just notice her, please. But it was a pain. It was a enjoyable kind of painful. it's just, it goes on forever, and it's the kind of story that makes you want to keep reading it because you want these two idiots to get together. And it's so funny. So funny. It's just great. So, Monthly Girls Nozaki-Kun. It's by Yen Press. You can read it. You can get the books, and you can also get it on Kindle. It's definitely worth your time. At least try the first book and let me know if you liked it in the comments. So for this first episode, I have one more recommendation for you. I really wanted to give you an example of what most of the episodes after this one are going to be, where all of these different suggestions are going to be from different genres, but they're all going to have something to do with each other. And this last one, I'm going to tell you about a realistic fiction story. And it's one that is actually really important. I would very much like to tell you about a book called They Called Us Enemy. And it's written by George Takei. Yes, that George Takei, the one from the internet, the one that the funny Asian old guy that goes, "Oh my." Yeah, him. It was produced by Top Shelf Productions, and what this is George's recollections and story about something that happened to him when he was a child. George grew up during World War II, and he lived in California with his family. He's a first-generation immigrant. His family came over here from Japan. And during World War II in California and most of the Western United States, the United States did something really stupid because they were afraid. They rounded up everybody that had connections to Japan because we were at war with them, and they put them in camps. Not death camps or anything like that, but they put them in internment camps so that they could not contact their brethren during the war. And George was only about 8, maybe 9 years old when this happened to him, but he remembers. He was going to school. He was born, he'd been going to public school his whole life when he lived in California, and his friends that he had one day just decided that he was just evil because of where he came from. And the government told him that he was evil because of his heritage. And this wonderful country that he had come to love, this land of the free, started calling him an enemy because of where he was from, where his family was from. And as he grew older, he decided he really wanted to tell this story in a graphic novel format so that other people could remember that this happened. Because this is not something that they teach in school, because of course it makes the US look terrible because they rounded up literally their citizens and put them in camps, which is what, the Nazis were doing. And George really wanted to tell this story, and he wanted more people to see it. And I read it. Of course, I had it pre-ordered. As soon as he announced it, I had it pre-ordered. And I got it the day it came out, and I sat down and I read it. And I was crying by, page 150. About halfway through, I was just quietly sobbing on my couch. And I had the great fortune to actually meet George at a convention, and I took my copy of the book for him, and I asked him to sign it for the Carolina Manga Library. And at the convention, they had you write down on a post-it note what you wanted it to say, the dedication to say, and I wrote down, for future generations, always keep reading the Carolina Manga Library, for the Carolina Manga Library. And George picked up the post-it note, and he was getting ready to write, and he stopped, and he looked at me. He looked right at me in the eye, and he says, "You're from a library?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "You're going to put my book in a library?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." Why? He asked me, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Because your story is important, and I want more people to hear about it." And legit, he started crying. And he came around the table, and he hugged me. And he's barely my height. The man is only 5'2", okay? So us short people, sticking together. So he hugs me, and he whispers in my ear, and he said, "You are going to carry my story. People like you are going to carry my story." And that really stuck with me, because this is what librarians kind of do, is we save these stories. And after the big, internet hype, this came out a few years ago. And while it was super popular then, it's still an important book now, but it's out of the popular zeitgeist, which is why I wanted to put it on here. And it's one of the reasons I want to do this podcast. I want to tell you guys about stories that are not only amazing, but are important and are great examples of why graphic novels and manga are important, not only to the people that enjoy the stories, but because they are an approachable medium that we can use to tell important stories like George's. So if you have not read They Called Us Enemy, you really need to go pick up a copy. You can get a physical copy, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's still in publication. You can get it on Kindle. You can come into my library and read it. It's so good and it's so important. And it really drives home why the Carolina Manga Library does what it does. We want to put books, important books, in people's hands long after they've been forgotten. All right, so welcome to the QA portion of the podcast. This is where I will actually read out some questions that we've gotten through our Discord, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. I'm going to try to do 2 or 3 every podcast. If you have a question that you'd like to hear me answer, if you've got a question about the library or about a book that you've read or anything that you can think of that has to do with books or the library, or even what's my favorite pizza topping, whatever you want to ask me, it's almost like an Ask Me Anything. You can join our Discord, Carolina Manga Library's Discord. The links are in the description and on our website. So let's just get started. Our first question came from one of our wonderful patrons, and they want to know, Dear Head Librarian, what do you think of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga? Oh boy, okay. So, JoJo, of course, is a cultural phenomenon. JoJo should not be as popular as it is, in my opinion. Now, keep in mind, that's my opinion. It's extremely well written. It's very funny, and you have no idea where it's going, which should all be boxes, ticking all my boxes here, but it just wasn't a series that super, super grabbed me, unfortunately. I know who to recommend it to. I know if certain people are looking for, if they're looking for something just off the wall, I almost always go hand them JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not worth reading. And a matter of fact, some of the stories that we're going to talk about in later episodes are going to be things that I didn't like at all. Like, I hated some of these. I was sitting here making my list, and there are a couple of them I was like, I hate this series so much, but it's so good. It just doesn't, it's just not what I say, my cup of oolong. So yeah, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, if you like your off-the-wall stories and you don't know what's going on, definitely go read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. All right, this next one comes from our Discord, and it says, Dear Head Librarian, what is your favorite book of all time? So funny story, I hate this question. I get asked this at every single event that I do. Like, well, what's your favorite? Well, it depends on the day of the week. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. There is no such thing for me as a librarian because I read so much and I've been reading for so long. There's no such thing as like your top 5, your top favorite manga or story of all time. Most of the time I head for Elfquest, which of course we talked about earlier today in the podcast, because it was one of my first graphic novels. But if you were to ask me, what's your favorite romance one? Well, unfortunately, it's actually hard to pick the one out, actually. My favorite romance of all time is probably Sailor Moon, because it was my first one, and I can still literally quote the darn manga. I can even quote the old translation where her name was Bunny instead of Usagi, and they just translated it literally to her name just being Bunny, which was great. Right now, my favorite romance that I'm reading is actually Lore Olympus, because it's amazing. But it changes all the time. So asking me what my favorite something or something is, be a little more specific. What's your favorite sci-fi series right now? What are your top 3 favorites? Things like that. So those I can answer, but picking my favorite of all time is like trying to pick a favorite ice cream. It doesn't really work. You think you have one, and then one day you're going to reach into your fridge and you'll have 2 different ones, and you'll have your favorite and you'll have something else. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to try something else instead of your favorite. So it's the same thing with me and manga. The flavor is never the same. So those are all the questions we had. We only had a couple this first time because, of course, this is our very first episodes. Hardly anybody knows what this is. But I'm really excited to see what kind of questions you all come up with. I'd really, really love to hear what you want me to know, what you want to know about us. A couple of quick announcements about the Carolina Manga Library. We are right now on our summer break. So we are working on the podcast. We just did a Kickstarter earlier this spring for enamel pins, and we just got the prototypes for those. Our next appearance is going to be at Libraricon in Fayetteville, North Carolina. and that is going to be on September the... It's going to be on September the 16th. The library will not be there, but I will be there. I'm a guest of the convention. I'm going to be doing a few panels, and it's going to be really fun. After that, our next full library appearance is going to be at Tsubasa-Con, which is in Charleston, West Virginia. It's one of our favorite conventions, and that is October 7th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And guess what? That's my birthday convention, so come on out and see us. After that, for the rest of the year, we only have one other appearance this year, and it's going to be at NecoCon, which is in Hampton, Virginia, and that's in November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And after that, I'm very sorry to say we will not be at Holiday Matsuri this year. I'm so sorry, Orlando friends. We really wanted to come see you this year, but with the new dates that they had to go with because of the convention center's availability, we just can't make it work this year, y'all. I'm so sorry. We're going to miss you so much, but we should be back next year once they solidify their new dates and their new venue. And then a new announcement, we are actually going to be at a brand new convention in a state we've never been to. We are going to be at Comic-Con in Birmingham, Alabama in February. So I'm very, very excited about that. We've never been to a convention out... Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Nope, that was still in Georgia. We went to a convention in a little college town that was literally on the border of Georgia and Alabama. The convention was in Georgia. We stayed at a hotel in Alabama. So we've never actually done a library convention or show in Alabama. So I'm very excited about that. So you can follow us along on all of our social media, of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those good things. So thank you so much for listening to our announcements. Thank you for joining us on this month's episode of Shelf Check, brought to you by Carolina Manga Library. We'll be back next month with school days in September. All of our recommendations are going to have something to do with school. Remember, if you're interested in supporting the library, consider becoming a patron. Our patrons get access to the podcast a day early, as well as behind-the-scenes fun like bloopers and transcripts. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find links to all this on our website, www.carolinamangalibrary.com. And until next month, we will see you in the stacks.